What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today, what I want to do, we previewed the Jets versus the New England Patriots game earlier today. What I want to do instead now is take a look at potential options to replace Jermaine Johnson externally. So we know who's on the roster right now, and you can go through and talk about Takk McKinley, Michael Clemens, Braden McGregor, Eric Watts as internal options to replace Jermaine Johnson. And at least in the short term, that's going to be the answer. But what about, is there anything else the Jets can do? And sure, we all know the obvious is pay Haason Reddick or sign Haason Reddick or, get him in here in some capacity. We've talked about that at length. You guys know how I feel about Haason Reddick. How about some external options that might be realistic? I'm not going to go, trade for Bryce Huff because the Eagles don't seem to really like him right now, and their fans are really down on him. We're gonna try to keep it realistic. Also, no JFM reunion. Unfortunately, he just got hurt in this most recent game in week 2. So I'd love to bring back both those guys. I like both those guys, but let's talk about some other options. Okay, so in this video, I have 2 trade options and 3 free agent options, if you will. So we'll start with the trade because I think they are a little bit more appealing than anyone who is left. Unfortunately, this is kind of it's September. The options on the free agency market aren't going to be great. And honestly, the realistic trade options aren't that great either, but we'll talk through them. The first one is probably the name that you're going to hear a lot of people bring up, and that's Jadeveon Clowney. And I like this idea. He only has 3 pressures, no sacks so far. He's playing on an absolutely abysmal Carolina Panthers team. They have not led at all this year. They've led all of it's something like 11 seconds in their last 18. Nah, it can't be 18 games, but it's a long stretch that they haven't led. Only 11 seconds of lead. So moral of the story, it's not like Jadeveon's been able to pin his ears back and really get after the quarterback, but he is coming off of a 9.5 sack season a year ago in Baltimore. Over his years in the league, he has also been one of the league's best run defending edges. Hey, that's a bonus because the Jets stink against the run right now and could use an upgrade for someone who is good against the run. Okay, the Jets expressed interest in the offseason in Jadeveon Clowney. They took a meeting, or were going to take a meeting with him. He ends up signing in Carolina. It was a homecoming of sorts, if you will. Well, they are 0-2 and in disarray as they're turning the keys over to Andy Dalton. So can Jadeveon Clowney be had via trade? I would think so. He already got paid. He already got his money. We know that he's kind of about signing these 1-year deals and trying to maximize his value on 1-year contracts. Don't really know how much it matters to him if he's playing in Carolina or if he's competing with the New York Jets to make the playoffs and potentially beyond that. So again, Jadeveon's probably the best of the semi-realistic options. Even if he's not the same guy that he once was, it's a veteran presence, good against the run, and also it can give you some pass rush juice, as seen as recently as just a year ago with 9.5 sacks. I also don't think it would cost a crazy amount of money or draft capital. No one's like, hey, give me a first-round pick for Jadeveon Clowney. No, I'm sure they would take a mid-round pick to bring in a rental Jadeveon Clowney. And the same could be said about this next option, Zaven Ojulari. So a in-state trade with your crosstown rival New York Giants. They've done it before. The Jets traded Leonard Williams to the New York Giants a few years ago at the deadline. Well, that's more than a few years ago now. That's 5 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. He has so far this year 1 pressure, no sacks yet. His best season came as a rookie in 2021. He had an 8-sack season. This past year, 25 pressures. That's averaged out to a 5.5 PRP, which is, for what that is, it's essentially a pressure rate on how many times you're getting after the quarterback versus your pass rush snaps. So he's not an every down player. Injuries are definitely a concern with him. The last 2 years, he has gotten hurt. So I get it if you don't want to take that flyer on Ojulari at this point, but seems like he's going to be an odd man out with the New York Giants. He wasn't drafted by the most recent regime, so I don't think he's getting re-signed at the end of the year. And by the way, that 5.5 PRP for reference, here's some other names, some that we will actually talk about very shortly or who are in a similar range. Kayvon Thibodeau had a 5.6, Yannick Ngakoue a 4.8, Bud Dupree a 5.6, and Arden Key a 5.3. Some names that you might recognize to give you some context of who's around that range usually. All right, to those free agent options, I just mentioned his name, but Yannick Ngakoue is a player that Jet fans have been talking about for probably close to 5 years. Last year, he had 4 sacks and 34 pressures in 13 games. Jets, as I said, Jets fans have talked about him forever. Last year, 2 years ago, I guess, in 2022, 9.5 sacks, 10 the year prior in 2021. Health is a question for him at this point, but Jets are kind of desperate right now. Obviously losing Jermaine Johnson, no Haason Reddick in the building, so we're not including him as an option right now. Is it worth a low-risk flyer on a guy like Yannick Ngakoue? Maybe. I'm sure it would get him you would need a few weeks to get up to speed, but if the Jets were to make a signing or an addition or bring in Haason Reddick, now feels like the time to do it because they play Thursday night this week, and then you have 10 days before you play again. So now might be the time. Another option is Shaq Lawson. Not that this is really a pretty option, but he was a Jet in 2021. He had 1 sack and 16 pressures a year ago with the Buffalo Bills. His best year was in 2019 with Buffalo. That's a long time ago now. Do I love Shaq Lawson? Am I going, oh my God, yes, the season is saved? Not really. And while we're on the Lawson conversation, I know people are going to ask about Carl Lawson. He's on the Cowboys practice squad. I just kind of feel like that ship has sailed. He's been more productive as a pass rusher recently. Like in 2022, he had a decent season with the New York Jets. Obviously, 2021, we saw the big injury. But how things ended with him last year, I'd be more surprised if they made that reunion, honestly, than someone like a Shaq Lawson. I just don't see it. I think Carl Lawson's going to stick on the practice squad with the Dallas Cowboys. Shaq Lawson, though, maybe he could be an option. Am I crazy excited about it? No, I'm not going to lie to you. Shaq Lawson wouldn't really move the needle for me a ton. But is he one of the better options available at this point? Sadly, probably yes. And the last guy who comes in on my list is Romeo Okwara, who spent the last few years with the Detroit Lions. Now, he had a very limited role a year ago, just 16 pressures and 2 sacks, 143 pass rush reps. He had a 6.7 PRP, though, so he's a little bit more productive with his limited role. So if the Jets want a situational pass rusher, maybe Okwara might be the best fit for that situational role of the free agent options. Best all-around option, I think, is definitely Jadeveon Clowney. Everyone is pretty much taking a flyer on, though. Like, Clowney's the already established player. He's the most seamless fit, I would think. But you're taking a gamble on any one of these guys. Shaq Lawson's maybe my least favorite of this bunch. Of the free agent options, I would say I'm between Okwara or Ngakoue. Again, not that any one of those guys are necessarily making you so excited about this Jets pass rush and taking you to the next level. But with Robert Saleh, White Cotton, the defensive line coach, and then obviously have to give credit to the Jets defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich. They've done good jobs of developing guys and, finding these guys seemingly out of nowhere and getting a lot out of them. So maybe the Jets do take a flyer on somebody. Let me know your thoughts on who you would like to see the New York Jets add at the edge rusher spot. I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.